The cold metal pressed against Minji's back as her eyes opened. Everything hurt. Her head felt heavy and her mouth was dry. Strange blue lights shined down on her from above. She tried to move but thick straps held her arms and legs to the table. Where was she? Minji blinked several times to clear her vision. The room was white and clean like a hospital. But this was not any hospital she knew. Strange machines with blinking lights surrounded her. Long tubes connected to tanks filled with green liquid. The air smelled wrong. It was too clean and had a sharp chemical smell that made her nose burn. Then she saw them. 3 tall creatures stood around her table. They were taller than any human. Their skin was gray and looked wet. Their heads were too big for their thin bodies. Large black eyes stared down at her. They had no hair at all. Their fingers were long and had too many joints. Minji's heart started beating fast. These were not humans. These were aliens. One of the creatures made clicking sounds with its mouth. The others clicked back. Above Minji's head, a blue light projected pictures in the air. The pictures showed the inside of a human body. Her body. They could see her bones and organs floating in the blue light like a doctor's X-ray but much more detailed. The tallest alien pointed at the pictures and made more clicking sounds. Minji could not understand the words but the tone was clear. They were talking about her like she was a dead animal they found on the road. A machine next to her table started making beeping sounds. Numbers appeared on a screen. The aliens looked at the numbers and clicked to each other again. One of them touched a panel and new pictures appeared in the air. This time they showed her brain. Minji forced herself to stay very still. She needed to think. How did she get here? The last thing she remembered was setting up camp on planet KX-7. She was there to study the plant life. Her team had found strange metal objects buried in the ground. Then everything went black. The aliens must have taken her while she was sleeping. But where were the others? Where was her team? The shortest alien moved closer to her table. It held something that looked like a metal stick with a glowing tip. Minji watched as it reached toward her arm. She wanted to pull away but forced herself to stay still. The metal stick touched her skin and she felt a sharp pain. The alien took something from her arm. Blood. More clicking sounds. The aliens seemed excited about something. They put her blood into a machine that started humming. New pictures appeared in the air above her. These showed tiny parts of her blood moving around. One alien turned to look at her face. Its black eyes were huge and showed no emotion. It made a clicking sound that might have been a word. Then it touched something on the wall and a voice spoke in English. Subject is awake. Beginning neural mapping procedure. Minji's blood turned cold. They could speak her language. They had been watching her this whole time. They knew she was awake. The tall alien moved to her head. It held a device with many thin metal wires. Human brain structure more primitive than expected, the voice said. The alien was speaking and the machine was changing its words to English. Limited processing capability. Neural pathways show basic pattern recognition only. Minji wanted to laugh. If only they knew what she was really thinking. Her mind was working fast now. She was studying them just like they were studying her. She watched how they moved. How they reacted to things. What made them nervous. The aliens moved slowly when they turned their heads. Their joints seemed to lock up for a moment when they tried to move quickly. When the alarm had beeped earlier, all 3 of them had frozen for several seconds before reacting. That was important information. She also noticed their tools. Everything was made for their long thin fingers. The restraints that held her were designed for their bone structure, not human bones. Human joints could bend in ways that alien joints could not. The machine finished analyzing her blood. More clicking sounds. The aliens seemed disappointed about something. One of them pointed at her legs and made a sound that seemed like complaining. Muscle density is higher than calculated, the English voice said. Bone structure shows signs of impact resistance. This specimen may have been damaged during collection. Damaged? Minji almost smiled. They thought her physical conditioning was damaged. They had no idea that humans train their bodies to be strong. These aliens had probably never done a single push-up in their lives. The tall alien picked up another tool. This one looked more dangerous. It had a sharp point and was connected to wires. Beginning brain tissue extraction for detailed analysis, the voice announced. That was enough. Minji had learned what she needed to know. These aliens were smart but they were weak. They moved slowly. They panicked easily. And they had made a big mistake. They had assumed she was helpless. The alien moved the sharp tool toward her head. Minji watched its approach and calculated the distance. 3 inches. 2 inches. 1 inch. She tensed the muscles in her right hand. The restraint was tight but not tight enough. Human thumbs could rotate in ways that no alien thumb could. She had been working on loosening the strap since she woke up. The sharp tool touched her forehead. The alien began to press down. Minji's hand slipped free from the restraint. The real experiment was about to begin. Minji's freed hand moved faster than the aliens could track. She grabbed the sharp tool from the surprised creature's grip and rolled sideways off the table. The restraints on her other arm and legs snapped as her human joints bent in ways the aliens had never seen before. The HFY froze. Their large black eyes went wide with shock. For 3 full seconds none of them moved. This was exactly what Minji had hoped for. Their stress response made them slow and stupid. She hit the floor running while they were still processing what had happened. Her bare feet slapped against the cold metal as she sprinted toward the control panels. Behind her, the aliens finally started to react. They made loud screeching sounds and stumbled toward her with jerky movements. Alert! Alert! Specimen has escaped containment, the translation voice announced from speakers in the ceiling. Minji reached the main control station and started pressing buttons. The alien technology was different from human machines, but the basic ideas were the same. Power buttons were usually red or bright colors. Important controls were in the center. Emergency stops were always easy to find. The first alien reached her just as she found what she was looking for. A big red button labeled with alien symbols. She slammed her fist down on it. All the lights in the lab turned red. A loud siren started wailing. Heavy metal doors began sliding shut over the exits. Emergency lockdown procedures were the same everywhere in the universe, it seemed. The alien grabbed for her with its long thin arms. Minji ducked under its reach and kicked hard at its knee joint. The creature made a horrible clicking scream and fell backward. Its leg bent in a direction legs were not supposed to bend. Impossible physical response time, one of the other aliens said through the translator. Neural scans indicated limited motor control capability. Minji almost laughed. These aliens had never seen a human who was scared and angry. They had measured her brain while she was unconscious and sleeping. They thought that was how humans always worked. They had no idea what adrenaline could do. She moved to the next control panel while the aliens struggled to coordinate their response. Everything about them was slow and careful. They talked before they acted. They analyzed before they moved. Humans did not work that way when they were in danger. Her fingers found another set of controls. These seemed to control the air in the room. She started adjusting settings randomly. The aliens needed their specific air mixture to think clearly. Humans could adapt to almost anything for short periods. The air in the room began to change. It got warmer and more humid. The aliens started breathing harder. Their movements became even slower. Environmental controls have been compromised, the shortest alien said. Its voice sounded strained. Atmosphere is becoming unsuitable for cognitive function. Good, Minji thought. Let them see how it feels. She found another panel that controlled the gravity in the room. Earth gravity was much stronger than what these aliens were used to. She slowly increased the gravity setting. The aliens began to struggle just to stand upright. Their thin legs shook under the increased weight. One alien tried to reach a communication device on the wall. Minji got there first. She ripped the device away from the wall and threw it across the room. It shattered against the metal floor. How is this possible? The tall alien gasped. It was now lying on the floor, unable to stand in the heavy gravity. Biological analysis indicated minimal strength capacity. Minji looked down at them. These creatures had never felt real physical stress in their lives. Their bodies were weak. Their technology did everything for them. They had never needed to fight or run or lift heavy things. Evolution had made them smart but soft. Humans were different. Humans came from a world that tried to kill them every day. Weather, predators, disease, other humans. Earth had made humanity strong in ways these aliens could never understand. She walked over to their main computer system. The aliens watched helplessly as she began touching the controls. Her brain was working faster than it ever had before. Pattern recognition kicked in as she studied the alien symbols and interface design. These creatures thought in straight lines. Their computer systems were logical but simple. They had never needed to design security against someone who thought like a human. Someone who could see patterns they missed. Someone who could make connections they could not. Within minutes, she had figured out how to access their data files. Information about their ship, their mission, their species began flowing across the screens. Most importantly, she found files about other humans. Her heart sank as she read the records. 17 other humans had been brought to this lab over the past year. None of them had woken up during the procedures. None of them had ever left this room alive. But she was different. Her metabolism was faster than normal humans because of her medical treatments for a rare condition. The alien drugs had worn off too quickly. She had woken up when she was supposed to be dead. Now she was angry. She turned back to the aliens who were struggling to breathe in the thick air and heavy gravity. Their superior attitudes had disappeared. Now they looked at her with something that might have been fear. "You made a mistake," Minji said slowly. "You thought humans were weak because you measured us when we were sleeping. You never saw what we can do when we are awake." The head researcher tried to speak but could barely get the words out. We did not know your species possessed such capabilities." Minji nodded and turned back to the computer. She still had work to do. These aliens needed to learn exactly what humans were capable of. And she was just getting started. The lab's main display screen flickered to life, showing a map of their ship. Minji began planning her next moves while the aliens watched helplessly from the floor. Minji studied the alien computer screens while the three HFY struggled on the floor behind her. The heavy gravity and thick air were making them weaker by the minute, but she needed to move fast. Other aliens on the ship would notice something was wrong soon. She found what she was looking for in their medical databases. The HFY had detailed files about their own biology. Their bodies were designed for their home world, which had light gravity and thin air. But there was something else. Something very useful. Their nervous systems were extremely sensitive to certain chemical compounds. Compounds that their own lab equipment could make very easily. Minji looked at the genetic sequencer in the corner of the room. It was a machine that could break down and rebuild biological materials. The aliens used it to study DNA and create new drugs. She could use it for something else entirely. She walked over to the machine and started entering commands. The alien interface was becoming easier to understand. Everything was labeled clearly because the HFY needed simple instructions. They were smart, but they did not think creatively like humans did. "What are you doing?" the tall alien gasped from the floor. It was having trouble breathing in the thick air. "Science," Minji answered without looking at it. She fed samples of HFY tissue into the sequencer. The machine began analyzing their cellular structure. Within minutes, it had mapped their entire biological makeup. Minji smiled as she read the results. Just as she had hoped. The HFY nervous system worked very differently from human nervous systems. They used a chemical called ZYX protein to send signals between their brain and muscles. If she could disrupt that chemical, she could paralyze them completely. And the best part was that ZYX protein did not exist in human bodies. Whatever she made would hurt them but leave her completely unharmed. She started programming the sequencer to create a modified version of their own brain chemistry. But instead of helping their nerves work better, her version would shut them down. It was like changing one small part in a car engine. The car would look the same but it would not run. "Stop this immediately," the head researcher wheezed. "You do not understand the consequences of your actions." Minji glanced back at the alien. "I understand perfectly. You brought 17 humans to this room. None of them left alive. Now you get to see what happens when you pick the wrong specimen." The sequencer finished its work with a soft beep. A small vial of clear liquid emerged from the machine. Minji picked it up carefully. This liquid would paralyze any HFY who breathed it or touched it. To humans, it would be as harmless as water. She loaded the liquid into the lab's air circulation system. Within seconds, it would spread throughout the entire ship. Every alien on board would be helpless within minutes. The three aliens in the room with her were already too weak to stop her. But she wanted to test her creation first. She opened the vial and poured a few drops onto a cloth. Then she walked over to the shortest alien. "Please," it whispered. "We meant no harm. This was only scientific research." "So is this," Minji said. She pressed the cloth against the alien's arm. The effect was immediate. The creature's body went completely stiff. Its eyes could still move and it could still breathe, but everything else stopped working. It could not speak or move its arms or legs. "Perfect," Minji said. She turned to the other two aliens. "Your friend is fine. Just temporarily paralyzed. The effect will wear off in about 6 hours. Unless I decide to give him more." The remaining aliens looked terrified. They had never seen anything like this before. In their world, the weak submitted to the strong. The strong did not fight back when they were captured. They certainly did not turn the captor's own tools against them. But humans were different. Humans had been fighting for survival since they lived in caves. When humans were trapped, they did not give up. They got creative. Minji walked back to the computer system. She had bigger plans now. The air circulation system would take care of the rest of the ship. But she needed to learn more about these aliens. She needed to understand their weaknesses. She accessed their cultural databases. The HFY were an old species. They had been spacefaring for thousands of years. They were very proud of their technology and their intelligence. They saw themselves as the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had studied hundreds of other alien species. Most of those species had submitted immediately when captured. Some had tried to fight but gave up quickly when they realized they could not win. None had ever successfully turned the situation around. The HFY had never met humans before. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Minji found their communication systems. She could send messages to other ships, to their home world, to their government. She smiled as an idea formed in her mind. "What are you planning?" the tall alien asked weakly. "I am going to teach your people about humans," Minji said. Starting with Lesson 1. Never underestimate a species that evolved on a death world. She began typing a message to the HFY Fleet Command. The message would tell them exactly what had happened here. How one human had defeated their entire research team. How their most advanced lab had been conquered in minutes. The paralyzed alien could only watch as Minji worked. Its eyes showed something that had never been there before. Fear. "Impossible," it had whispered when she first broke free. Now Minji was proving that humans specialized in making the impossible look easy. She finished the message and sent it. Throughout the ship, aliens were already starting to collapse as her chemical weapon spread through the air. Soon she would be the only conscious being on the entire vessel. The HFY had wanted to study human biology. Now they were going to get a lesson in human psychology instead. 20 minutes later, Minji heard the first alien bodies hitting the floor in the corridors outside. Her chemical weapon was working perfectly. The ship's air system had carried it to every room. Soon every HFY on board would be paralyzed and helpless. She walked to the lab door and pressed the control panel. The heavy metal door slid open with a soft hiss. The hallway beyond was filled with fallen aliens. Some were completely still. Others twitched weakly on the floor, their large black eyes staring at nothing. Minji stepped over them carefully as she made her way toward the ship's command center. Her bare feet were silent on the cold metal floor. The aliens had taken her clothes and equipment when they captured her, but they had left her with something much more valuable: her human brain. The command center was a large round room filled with blinking displays and floating holographic screens. 5 aliens had collapsed at their stations. Minji could see star charts and navigation displays showing their position. They were 3 days away from Earth at their current speed. She sat down at the captain's station and began studying the controls. The HFY designed everything to be logical and simple. Each button was clearly labeled. Each screen showed exactly what it controlled. They had never needed to worry about security because no other species had ever successfully taken over their ships. Until now. Minji found the ship's communication system and opened a channel to Earth. It would take several hours for her message to reach home, but she needed to tell someone what had happened. The message was simple: Dr. Minji Park alive and safe. Have taken control of alien vessel. Requesting immediate diplomatic contact. Then she turned her attention to the ship's databases. She wanted to know everything about these aliens. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their plans for humanity. What she found made her angry all over again. The HFY had been watching Earth for over 50 years. They had detailed files about human civilization, human technology, human biology. They knew about human wars, human art, human science. They had studied everything about humanity except the one thing that mattered most. They had never understood what made humans dangerous. The files showed that they considered humans to be an interesting but primitive species. Good for biological research but no threat to advanced civilizations. Their reports described human technology as crude but functional, and human intelligence as limited but creative in unexpected ways. They had completely missed the point. Minji opened another file and found detailed records of the 17 humans they had captured. Names, ages, professions. Most were scientists and explorers like herself. People who had been alone on remote planets when the HFY found them. But there was one file that made her stop breathing for a moment. Her younger brother Taehyun was on the list. He had been captured 6 months ago while surveying an asteroid field. The file said his biological analysis had been completed. Her hands shook as she read the details. Taehyun had been a fighter pilot before becoming an explorer. He had always been stronger and faster than she was. But he had never woken up on their table. The drugs had worked perfectly on him. Minji closed her eyes and took deep breaths. She could not help Taehyun now. But she could make sure this never happened to another human. She opened the ship's personnel files and began studying the HFY crew. 43 aliens total. All of them were now paralyzed and helpless. But paralysis was temporary. She needed a more permanent solution. The answer came to her as she read about their social structure. The HFY were extremely hierarchical. They always obeyed whoever was in charge. They could not imagine disobeying authority figures. It was not in their nature. She just needed to become their authority figure. Minji found the ship's internal announcement system and began recording a message in their own language. Learning HFY had been easier than expected. Their language was very logical and followed clear patterns. Human brains were much better at pattern recognition than HFY brains were. "Attention all crew members," she said in perfect HFY clicking sounds. "This ship is now under human command. I am Dr. Minji Park, your new captain. You will follow all my orders without question." She sent the message throughout the ship and then waited. The paralysis drug would wear off gradually over the next few hours. When the aliens woke up, they would find their entire world had changed. While she waited, Minji explored more of the ship. She found their weapon systems and disabled them. She found their long-range communications and took control of them. Most importantly, she found their research records. The HFY had been studying dozens of different species for centuries. They saw themselves as the galaxy's greatest scientists. They took specimens from primitive worlds and dissected them to understand how life evolved in different places. But they had never encountered a species like humans before. A species that got stronger under pressure instead of weaker. A species that fought back instead of giving up. A species that could learn their technology and use it against them. Minji sat in the captain's chair and looked out at the stars through the main viewing screen. In a few hours, the aliens would wake up to find that everything they thought they knew about the universe had changed. They had tried to make her a specimen in their lab. Instead, they had given a human complete control of their most advanced research vessel. The irony was perfect. The HFY prided themselves on being logical and scientific. Well, they were about to get a very scientific lesson about human capabilities. Minji began planning her next moves. She had a ship full of aliens to manage, a message to send to their government, and a very important point to make about humanity's place in the galaxy. The HFY had wanted to study human biology. Now they were going to learn about human determination instead. 6 hours later, the first alien began to wake up. Minji watched from the captain's chair as the tall researcher slowly opened its black eyes. The creature tried to move but found thick metal bands holding it to the floor. Minji had used their own restraint technology to secure every alien on the ship. "Good morning," Minji said in perfect HFY language. "I hope you slept well." The alien's eyes went wide with shock. Not just because it was restrained, but because a human had just spoken to it in its native tongue. "Impossible," its expression seemed to say. "You have been unconscious for 6 hours and 14 minutes, Minji continued. "During that time, I have taken complete control of your vessel. I have also made contact with both human and HFY authorities." More aliens began waking up throughout the ship. Minji could hear confused clicking sounds coming from the speakers as they discovered their situation. She had placed cameras in every room so she could watch all of them at once. "This cannot be happening," the head researcher whispered. "Your species lacks the cognitive ability to operate our technology." Minji smiled and gestured to the screens around her. Each one showed different ship systems running smoothly under her control. Navigation, life support, communications, weapons. Everything was working perfectly. "Apparently your research was incomplete," she said. A new voice came through the communication system. It was speaking HFY but with a different accent. "Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zekthal. Respond immediately or face destruction." Minji pressed a button and her face appeared on screens throughout the HFY fleet. 27 warships had surrounded the research vessel while she was working. They had come to investigate why the ship had stopped responding to their commands. "Fleet Commander," Minji said calmly. "I am Dr. Minji Park of Earth. I am now the captain of this research vessel. Your crew is safe but restrained. We need to discuss new terms for our species relationship." The communication channel was quiet for a long time. Minji could imagine the chaos in the fleet command center. They had never dealt with anything like this before. "Human," the fleet commander's voice finally returned. "You will release our crew immediately and surrender yourself for processing." "No," Minji replied simply. "Here are my terms instead. Your species will immediately cease all hostile actions against humans. You will return the remains of the 17 humans you murdered in this lab. You will provide full compensation to their families. And you will sign a formal treaty recognizing humanity as an equal species." The head researcher on the floor made choking sounds that might have been laughter. "You are one human on a single ship. We have an entire fleet. Your demands are ridiculous." Minji turned to look at the alien. "Are they? Let me show you something interesting." She activated the ship's external cameras and displayed the images on the main screen. The HFY fleet ships were positioned in a standard formation around them. Very organized and logical, just like everything else the aliens did. Your fleet is following standard procedure, Minji said. Predictable patterns based on thousands of years of military doctrine. That makes them easy targets. She had spent the last 6 hours studying their weapon systems and fleet tactics. The HFY fought like they did everything else. Carefully, logically, and without imagination. They had never faced an enemy who thought differently than they did. Minji's fingers moved across the control panels. She activated the research ship's defensive systems and began targeting the fleet's weak points. Not to destroy them, but to demonstrate something important. I have identified critical vulnerabilities in 14 of your ships, she announced. Your shield generators have a 7-second reset delay. Your weapons need 12 seconds to retarget. Your navigation computers cannot handle random course changes faster than every 30 seconds. She fired a series of precise shots at the fleet. Each shot hit exactly where she said it would. Shield generators overloaded. Weapon systems went offline. 3 ships began spinning out of control as their navigation failed. The aliens on the floor stared at the displays in shock. No one had ever analyzed their technology so quickly. No one had ever exploited their weaknesses so easily. How? The head researcher whispered. Humans think differently than you do, Minji explained. You see patterns and follow them. We see patterns and break them. You design systems that work logically. We find ways to make them work illogically. Her communication screen lit up with incoming messages. Not from the HFY fleet, but from Earth. Human ships were approaching at maximum speed. Her message had reached home and Admiral Kim Seo-jun was bringing the entire Pacific Fleet to investigate. Dr. Park, Admiral Kim's voice came through clearly. What is your status? I am in command of a HFY research vessel with 43 alien prisoners, Minji reported. I have detailed intelligence about their technology and military capabilities. I recommend we begin immediate negotiations from a position of strength. The HFY fleet commander's voice returned, much less confident than before. Human captain. Perhaps we should discuss your proposals more carefully. Minji leaned back in the captain's chair. Around her, the paralyzed aliens watched helplessly as she spoke with both human and HFY authorities. Their entire understanding of the galaxy's power structure was crumbling. Here is what will happen, she announced to both fleets. This ship will become humanity's first interstellar research station. The HFY crew will remain as my research assistants. They have a lot to learn about human capabilities. She looked down at the head researcher. Starting with Lesson 1. Never perform medical procedures on a species you have not fully understood. You measured my brain while I was unconscious. That was your fatal mistake. The alien's large eyes showed something that had never been there before. Respect mixed with terror. Within hours, diplomats from both species were aboard the ship. The HFY signed every treaty Minji had demanded. They had no choice. She had proven that humans were not primitive specimens to be dissected. They were a species that could take your own laboratory and use it against you. As the new director of the galaxy's most advanced research facility, Minji had only one rule for her alien staff. Never underestimate a human again.